I don't know how anyone that is a fan of, that cares about, that lives in the area of, that is any way indirectly or directly connected to the Atlantic Coast Conference, it's not a little upset. It's not somewhere on the upset spectrum from a little upset to furious and throwing things. I don't know how you're not after watching what happened to Miami, which is weird because normally I don't care about Miami. Normally, kind of rooting for Miami to get beat, but it is a sibling or a cousin relationship when you're in the same conference as someone, which is I want to beat you, but if someone else starts picking on you from outside our circle, now we have to bind ourselves together and fight back. Miami got messed over, and SMU, who is a brand new family member but a family member nonetheless for the ACC,
they married in, but they're still family.
They're being set up to be messed over. They married in yet. The wedding was like 2 weekends ago. Now he's calling in a favor. You're an in-law that just joined the family. Now you're saying like, hey, I'm moving. Can you move a couch? All right, fine. 'Cause you're family. That's how I feel defending SMU. But SMU is being set up to get a like mafia movie whacked. Right, that ominous part of the movie where everybody knows somebody's about to show up at the restaurant and there's not going to be a violin in that violin case, and that's what it's looking like. Jim Phillips, the commissioner of the ACC, put out a statement. By the way, actually, I don't know if I've said where the rankings actually are. College football playoff rankings came out last night. Oregon, I'm going to just read them in order. I'm just do that. You can keep up. If not, whether they're exact or not isn't that important, but I'll read them for you in case you're curious. Oregon, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame, Georgia, Ohio State. That's 6th for Ohio State. Tennessee, 7th. SMU, 8th, followed by Indiana, Boise in the top 10 at 10. Alabama at 11. That's one to keep in mind. And 12, Miami. Just missing the top 12, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Arizona State. Almost said Florida State. They just missed the top 12, did Florida State.
Yeah, Florida State.
Yeah, Florida State. 300.
Yeah. Just missed it by about 130.
15th was Arizona State, was what I was trying to say. So here's the statement, at least in part, from the commissioner of the ACC. We are certainly pleased that SMU moved up in the rankings and that the committee continued to recognize the Mustangs' incredible season, which should unequivocally earn them a playoff spot, regardless of this week's outcome. SMU will be playing in the ACC championship against Clemson. With that said, we are also incredibly shocked and disappointed that Miami dropped 6 spots to number 12. Miami has more wins and fewer losses than the team directly ahead of them and a dominant victory over an SEC. Then he goes into the details. 2 parts of this. The Miami dropping 6 spots from 6 to 12. Could have told you that was going to happen. And dropping more than Ohio State. Ohio State had a worse loss than Miami. Yes, bad, awful. Miami almost certainly now not in the college football playoff when I believe they should. Having them below Alabama is a problem. We'll get into that problem. SMU, 8, it's not high enough. Here's why it's not high enough to feel confident that if they lose, they won't fall out of the college football playoff. You have to be in the top 11 if you're an ACC school because there's an auto bid going to a conference champion that'll come outside the top 12. So 8, if you lose to Clemson, you drop to 12, you're done. You're out. Thank you, but no thank you. You can go to a bowl game that no one's going to watch. Your players will opt out. That's an issue. And Ward Manuel, the spokesperson for the committee, did say that conference championship games will adjust some teams and how they're seen by the committee.
Those who are not playing, we will not adjust those teams because they don't have another data point, obviously. But in terms of those who are playing, how they'll move, if they'll move at all, if you remember 2 years ago, TCU lost in their conference championship game and didn't move. They stayed at 3. So we could do that or we could adjust depending on the outcomes of the game.
I hate this for 1,000 reasons. Hate it for, first of all, no more data points? So you're saying data points can only come in games? Remember last year when Florida State didn't make it to the college football playoff because their quarterback got hurt?
Yeah.
I wouldn't wish this on anybody. What if Jalen Milroe tears something in practice? Quarterback of Alabama. If an injured quarterback is enough for Florida State to not go through, why are you done with data points for everyone not playing in it? The things you've taken into account all the way up till this point involved production in games and a billion other things. What about strength of schedule? What if you beat Clemson and Clemson goes out there and rolls SMU? Now suddenly does that win look better and boost you, or are you not moving anybody because they're not playing football? There's a bunch of things you've taken into account up to this point other than games to turn around and say we're not changing our opinion on anyone that's not playing games. It's foolish. And we could get into the details, and that's partially what Jim Phillips, the commissioner, started doing. This team has beaten this many teams and this many ranked teams. We could do it with Alabama and Miami. Alabama at 11 with no more games to play is a problem because they can't move up or down. They can't get better or worse now that they've said that about the data points. They're not in the SEC championship, so they're at 11. They feel like they're in. They have 3 losses, 2 of them to Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. The Oklahoma loss was 24-3. That's bad.
Yeah.
Oklahoma's played 5 ranked teams, lost to them all, except for smoking Alabama. Miami is a better team based on what they've put on. I'm not saying who you think would win in a game. I'm talking about the results, which is not objective. They're a better team than Alabama. But arguing details and doing all of that and doing the, I'll again read part of the statement. Miami has more wins and fewer losses than the team directly ahead of them, a dominant victory over an SEC team whose late season surge includes a win over number 13 Ole Miss. Moreover, with the details, I did it, he did it, you did it. You can tune into any sports media show in college football country and hear the details. They don't matter. And I hate doing this, but I'm going to do it because it's going to feel good for me, and I just need to get it off my chest.
Get 'em.
I told you so. Go back to the very, very, very first college football rankings that came out this year. I'm going to tell you exactly what happened. Miami was at 3 or 4. BYU was at 7. At the time, they were both undefeated, and BYU had a better win. Okay? And during Ward Manuel, the spokesperson's media availability after that very first college football playoff ranking came out, was asked, why is Miami multiple spots ahead of BYU when their resumes are wildly similar? And his response was, we like the explosiveness of Miami's offense, and it came down to the eye test. I liked the eye test. He used the term eye test. Now, at that time, right, I'm an advocate for the ACC. We're here in the Triangle in North Carolina. I love the Atlantic Coast Conference. The ACC was benefiting from the eye test there. Miami was the bigger brand. Miami was the, versus BYU, was the flashier, better for business example. So they got boosted, and then they blamed it on the eye test. And my antennas went up then. Because I said, if they can treat BYU like that, they can treat the ACC like that. And they won't have to give any factual, concrete information. They won't have to give any real reason for their decisions. They can just lean back and say eye test. So now Alabama's over Miami. And I'm going, I hated this when the ACC was benefiting from it because I knew they were going to use it to get the SEC or the Big Ten over the ACC in a more crucial moment. Ward Manuel, the spokesperson, was asked why Alabama over Miami.
What it came down to is as we evaluated both teams and looked at how they rank, obviously we think highly of both teams. One's at 11, one's at 12. But what it really came down to is Alabama is 3-1 against current top 25 teams, and Miami is 0-1. Alabama is 6-1 against teams above 500, and Miami's 4-2. Both have had some losses that weren't what they wanted out of those games. But in the last 3 games, Miami has lost twice. And so for us, in evaluating their body of work, we felt that Alabama got the edge.
Hate it. Do you know why? When he was talking wins, when he was talking the stats that benefited Alabama, He had details. He had they're 4-2 against this and 5-1 and against this. And then he got to the losses, the bad losses that would have benefited Miami, and he went, yeah, they both have losses they don't love. Oh, you only bring out details for one of them, huh?
Mm-hmm.
You can bring out numbers and stats when it helps you, but when you get to the other part, you just kind of acknowledge it in passing. You do what you want. The same way Miami was over BYU in that first ranking, they just chose Alabama over Miami because they want to. And do you know what it reminds me of? One time, when I was, I don't know, actually the players, the person I'm telling the story about is now a coach at UConn football. We were in a 3-on-3 basketball tournament. This is probably, we're 15 years old. And it was call your own fouls. It's like for a charity thing. And no disrespect to my buddy. He's a much better athlete than I ever was. He called a lot of fouls. Okay, every time he drove to the bucket, our ball up top, and one, our ball up top. And I remember after the game, my dad had watched it 3-on-3. He called me over. He goes, you guys, listen. You guys got to get better at the foul thing. I was like, what do you mean? I was like, I know he called a lot. He goes, tell him don't call anything for the first, 8 points. Because then if you absolutely need a foul call with, game point, because you're playing to 11, you've already established the rules. You're like, hey, I let most go, but that one was bad. You're setting them up for the end of the game, and it's like in competition, that's how it works, right? The things you do set the precedent, and now everyone believes you, and da. So the College Football Playoff Committee, way back in the very first ranking, was looking at the ACC, going, "Listen, we're letting things go. We're letting things fly. We like you." So then, when it comes down to game point, they can call any foul they want and look at us and go, hey, it worked for you last time, right? We let it go when Miami, we just flaunted Miami to the top 3 in that first one, right? Miami can't complain now. We've already established that this is kind of a willy-nilly game. I hate it. When the results and the details don't matter, that's kind of the only thing that should.